The implicit acceptance of European superiority is our greatest undoing in Africa. China, for example, has never acquiesced to European superiority, not for a day. China does not even practice Western democracy. And see where China is today. We need to interrogate those assumptions. One of them is that democracy translates to development. We need to interrogate that. For as long as we remain under the shadow of the West, for as long we shall remain behind the West. An education that cannot give us the courage to challenge and interrogate these assumptions is not education, it is propaganda. For the record, Africa was actually educated before Europe. The first university in the world, and if you Google that, that's what you find. The first university in the world was the University of Qarawin, that was founded in 859 AD, which is today located in Fez, in Morocco, and is still running as a university with some Nigerian students there. The next, that's the second university, is that of Al-Azhar, founded in 970 AD, located in Cairo, which is still running. The third university in the world is that of University of Sankore in Timbuktu, which was founded in the year 989. The next university, the fourth in the world, is the one in Bologna, Italy, which was founded in 1088. These are the records as we know them. Now, it should be interesting to also note that the University of Qarawin was actually built by a woman. Her name is Fatima Al-Fihri. And when she died before completing, her sister completed the building. The University of Al-Azhar was built in honor of a great woman, Sayyidatuna Fatima, the daughter of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Sankore University was also built by another woman, a Bambara businesswoman. Now this shows you the role that women played in Africa at that particular time. Europe was actually woken up from its slumber by the flourishing Muslim polity established by the Almoravids in the 11th century. The Almoravids, which are actually Almorabitin in Arabic, is an African movement that took over Spain and turned it into an intellectual hub that stimulated medieval Europe and sparked the Renaissance of the 15th, 16th century. The details of this is contained in the seminal work of Professor George Makdisi, titled The Rise of Colleges, Institutions of Learning in Islam and the West. It suffices to quote a towering Western Orientalist, Montgomery Ward, when he said, "Not only did Islam share with Western Europe many material products and technological discoveries, not only did it stimulate Europe intellectually in the fields of science and philosophy, but it provoked Europe into forming a new image of itself. Because Europe was reacting against Islam, it belittled the influence of the Saracens and exaggerated its dependence on its Greek and Roman heritage. So today, an important task for our Western Europeans as we move to the era of one world is to correct this false emphasis and to acknowledge fully the debt to the Arab and Islamic world. Professor George Mattis himself added that, on the other hand, it is common knowledge that the West was not oblivious of higher civilization of Islam. It learned its language, translated its works in order to bring itself to the level of the higher culture, the better to defend itself against it. Now it's interesting, we don't read the intellectual history of the West. most of us, and this is why we don't quite understand the West. A lot of the classics that were written, and you must have heard the one written by Dante Alighieri, A Divine Comedy. A lot of it are translations of works of earlier scholars. And if you care to go into that, you'll be astonished at the level of that influence. I need to clarify that what Gombe what referred to Arabs are actually, majority of them are not Arabs. They're actually Africans and Persians. They wrote in Arabic because that was the language of scholarship then. Just like we write in English. I do most of my writing in English, and that doesn't make me English. But if somebody a few years down the line, or 1-2 centuries, picks it up, he would say, well, this English scholar, maybe, but that doesn't make me English. The language of research and writing in our part of the world. The point being emphasized here, lest we lose it, is that Europe and its civilization has no claim to any intellectual civilization, any intellectual or civilizational superiority over us. And our contemporary educational system, while free to learn from any civilization, including European civilization, must not be Eurocentric, particularly when we are ourselves heirs to civilization that was and still is superior to the Western civilization. For the avoidance of doubt, human civilizations are not rated by the gadgets or technologies they produce, but by the values and the ethos they exude. Another point that needs to be made for clarification is that the European imperialists that I made reference to, who perpetrated colonization in Africa, were not necessarily Christians. If they were, they certainly could not have been good Christians. The looting and the tyranny and the arrogance they unleashed. By the admission of one of them, they went to church on Sundays only when the ground was too wet to play golf. Before diving into the core of the topic, perhaps we should tarry a little and clarify what exactly is a university. Now, this is important because not many people quite, maybe outside or even inside the university, quite understand what is a university. What is it supposed to do? Here I find the experience of Professor Simon Lees very cogent. Lees was and still is, I think, a sinologist. That's an expert on China or Chinese studies and civilization, who spent his life in the university system and left it a few years ago, just when it stopped being one. As summarized in his very short article, An Idea of the University. As a homage to Cardinal Newman's The Idea of University. Cardinal Newman is a very interesting character. He was an Anglican, he became a Catholic, and he became a cardinal, and he headed one of the best or the most prestigious of the colleges of Oxford. He was a philosopher, he was a mathematician, he was also a theologian. And that's how knowledge is. The fact that you are a theologian doesn't restrict you. The fact that you are a philosopher or mathematician doesn't stop you from going into theology. Knowledge is encyclopedic. It is now that we have got these specializations that tend to draw walls and create a lot of, So maybe some of you would like to read about this interesting cardinal. His work remained a classic work on university education, seeking to broaden and deepen knowledge in the face of secular constraints. Lees was addressing two important aspects of the university: the ivory tower, a place of intellectual excellence, and the tide of dirt hitting its wall, trying to undermine it. In other words, a struggle between knowledge and ignorance. In addressing the ivory tower, he took what he considered to be a generally accepted definition of a university, and he said, A university is a place where scholars seek truth, pursue and transmit knowledge for knowledge's sake, irrespective of the consequences, implications, utility of the endeavor. He proceeded to explain that a university needs 4 things to function. 2 of these are essential, and the other 2 are not essential. The 2 essential requirements of a university are scholars and a good library. The non-essentials are students and funding. Now, it's important to understand that a university is a center of learning. If you care, you go and learn. If you don't, that is your business. The scholars are most important of all, for they are the university. If you read Simon, sometime British politician went to Oxford, and I think he was either secretary to education, and he was addressing the university, and he was talking to the lecturers, the faculty, and he was promising them that as employees of the university, we are going to make your condition of service better. And one scholar responded to him there and then. He said, we are not employees of the university. We are the university as scholars. That's the faculty. That's the root of the university. When he turned to the attention of the forces of ignorance seeking to undermine the sublime goals of the university, he had 2 issues to address: this elitist nature of the university and its utility. Now, defending the elitist character, and I quote him here very succinctly, he said, the demand for equality, because there are people who tend to say, oh, we need equality. Yes, we need equality, but equality has its place. He said the demand for equality is noble and must be fully supported, but only within its own sphere, which is that of social justice. It has no place anywhere else. Democracy is the only acceptable political system. I have my doubts on this, so it's not everything that I read that I agree with. Yet it pertains to politics exclusively and has no application in any other domain. When it is applied elsewhere, it is death. For truth is not democratic. Intelligence and talent are not democratic. No beauty, no love, no God's grace. A truly democratic education is an education that equips people intellectually to defend and promote democracy within the political world. But in its own world, education must be ruthlessly aristocratic, highbrow, and shamelessly geared towards excellence. When he turned to the issue of utility, he drew aspiration from one of the Chinese philosophers and sages who existed before Christ. And he said, people know the uselessness of what is useful, but they do not know the usefulness of what is useless. Now, this is a philosophical saying. You need to reflect more on it to understand it. The superior utility of the university, what enables it to perform its function, rests entirely upon what the world deems to be its uselessness. Leys was trying to attack utilitarianism, which is a very one of the forces or one of the intellectual waves in Europe. He said, pointing to the shallowness of utilitarianism, he warned that when a university yields to the utilitarian temptation, it betrays its vocation and sells its soul. 5 centuries ago, the great Renaissance scholar came with this saying, which translates to, one is not born a man, one becomes it. A university is not a factory producing graduates like a sausage factory producing sausages. It is a place where a chance is given to man, and this is the generic man, so it includes men and women, to become what they truly are. I will add, or what they can truly be. It's a place that allows human beings to explore and develop themselves to the highest capacity possible. Lees may sound harsh in his defense, but it's a measure of his context and his passion. A more balanced view would admit that a university would have to serve the society it is located in and made up of, and this is a major theme of this paper, which we shall delve in now. But perhaps we should add a clarification here again regarding the constant complaint of the university's main vocation, which is the search for knowledge. In our days and age, often we hear complaints that this is academic, something to be dismissed, not something not to bother about. This is academic, a euphemism for utopia or lack of practicality. One can dismiss this as a sheer dumbness or sheer ignorance, but it may help to explain. The vehicles that we use for our logistics, the plane we fly to places, including places of worship like Mecca and Jerusalem, the phone that we are holding, and all pieces of technology with precision engineering, which we are enjoying, that are there precisely because of the academic research and standards. So you can't dismiss academics. You are benefiting from academics. Without that research, you will not be enjoying what you are enjoying. This human folly goes back to the time of the Greeks, when Socrates, who was accused of corrupting the youth of Athens, was once asked, "Of what use are philosophers?" He immediately replied that philosophers are of no use. The man who asked him was visibly happy and was leaving when Socrates told him, "But you didn't ask why they are of no use." Then he said, "Okay, why are they of no use?" Socrates replied to him, "Because people don't know how to make use of them." Now, we come to the challenge of content. A discussion on content is a discussion on relevance. The relevance of the content of our needs and our context as a people and as a nation. As a people and as a nation, we live in the 21st century today, where knowledge is the greatest capital. To survive and thrive in the highly competitive environment of the 21st century, we must leverage on knowledge more than anything else. If for this alone, we must pay attention to the content of our education, especially our higher education. It's higher education that shapes the other lower levels of education. The question of relevance was first raised at a convocation level in 1971 by the late Waziri General of Sokoto at a convocation of he responded, or he was responding on behalf of fellow recipients of degrees. The Waziri then was concerned with the fundamental issue of ownership of our universities, while recognizing that knowledge is universal and timeless, but it has a social and cultural stamp. It also has a purpose and a particular worldview, it therefore cannot be neutral. He proceeded to observe that in this regard, one would like to see the Ahmadu Bello University Zaria, because of its social and cultural setting, as continuing the tradition of scholarship nurtured at the Sankore University, Timbuktu. He added that the University of Sankore and the community that supported its scholars and its students were tied very closely to each other. The university was the symbol of the spirit of the community, the guardian of its morals, and the formulator of its hopes and aspirations. I must state that your university, referring to Ahmadu Bello University, like others in Nigeria, is a cultural transplant whose roots lie in other traditions. I speak for many of my countrymen when I say our universities appear to belong to us only in their location and their names. This is what Wazir Junaid said at that convocation. It is well over 50 years since this famous speech, yet not much has changed. For what I know, today the values in the campuses contrasts diametrically with the values of the wider society in which these societies are located. The campus communities often look down with contempt at the wider society, while the wider society looks at the university community with suspicion. They see them as some weird strangers symbolizing values of foreign cultures. How then can the content of these institutions relate to or even make sense to the wider society? This is why it is still pertinent to place the issue on the table